Good morning, everyone. So, in today's class, as I had informed you yesterday, uh, I'd be starting this short story that you have in your syllabus, and that is Jhumpa Lahiri's short story, Temporary Matter. That is the name of the short story. Now, in your history of English prose, which you have, I have done Elizabethan prose that was covered in the previous class. Now I'll now go on to this short story, and we will before we begin the short story, the text I have given you in the group. So please follow the text. Before reading the text, I will do one thing. I'll just tell you in short something about. I'll tell you in short something about Jhumpa Lahiri. Now, I think that many of you might have heard about her, and some of you may have read her books. Uh, I do not know whether any of you have read her books, but she is one of the very well-known writers uh, writing in English at the present time. And as you can understand from her surname, she is a Bengali, but she was actually she lives uh, in the US, and she works there in a university. She is a professor there, and she has published a number of short story collections and novels also. And this particular short story, A Temporary Matter, it is a part of our first collection of short stories, which is titled uh, Interpreter of Maladies. So this was published in 1999, and it got this uh, some awards also. Next, she published other collections and the novel The Lowland, which was based on the Naxalite movement in Bengal during the 1970s. Uh, she has also published other works. Basically, she has become one of the leading writers, um, as I have told you. So this is a short introduction to Jhumpa Lahiri, and we would read her short story, A Temporary Matter. I will just share the screen with you. So this is the short story, A Temporary Matter, published in the collection of short stories. I'll just go to the last part, and this is uh, the collection of short stories, Interpreter of Maladies, which was published in the year 1991 by Houghton Mifflin. So let us move on to the first part, the beginning of the short story. Now, before we start reading this short story, let me tell you one thing. You will find here, certain expressions and references to different kinds of varieties of food, and some unfamiliar words would be there, which you'd need to actually uh, know the meaning of. Now, I will, of course, try to provide you with the meaning, and give you the meaning as we read along. I would advise you also to use a good dictionary, the Oxford English Dictionary or the Cambridge English Dictionary, so that you will be able to consult these words or phrases uh, which would be quite unfamiliar to you. So that is the way you can build up your vocabulary, and you can also learn the meanings of unfamiliar, uncommon words. So this short story, let me tell you, it is set in the city of Boston, which is in the United States. As you know that Jhumpa Lahiri, actually she writes about uh, Indian families who have settled in the United States. So just like her parents did, when she was only 3 years old, they moved to the USA. And there she grew up and she studied and graduated and did her PhD, and she published her novels, short stories, and ultimately she uh, is working in a university there. Now let us start the story, and the title is A Temporary Matter. So the title gives us the impression that the story is about something that is actually not permanent in nature. The writer here is going to talk about something that is not of lasting importance, but she is going to discuss something about uh, a temporary thing. So what that temporary matter is, of course, we will come to know as we move on with the story. So let us read. The notice informed them that it was a temporary matter. For 5 days, their electricity would be cut off for 1 hour, beginning at 8 p.m. So the first sentence, just we can see that a notice has been served, and the notice mentioned that there would be a disruption in the electricity connection for 1 hour for 5 days. So notice the number of days, 5 days, and the duration, that is 1 hour, and it would begin every night at 8 p.m. So this is the notice that we uh, we see that has been served. Now, what is the cause why this disruption in the electricity supply would occur? A line had gone down in the last snowstorm, and the repairmen were going to take advantage of the milder evenings to set it right. So this is the reason that there was a snowstorm, and the result was that the lines had been destroyed, or they have to be repaired. So the repairmen, they were going to take advantage of the milder evenings to set it right. So the repairmen, the people who would do the repair work, they would be working in the evenings. So not at day, not during daytime, but in the evenings. So it's something like what happened in our own state, this like the cyclone Remal or the other cyclones that had destroyed houses and properties, and even lives were lost. So it's something like that, but it is a snowstorm, not a cyclone, that destroyed the electricity supply. The work would affect only the houses on the quiet, tree-lined street within walking distance of a row of brick-faced stores and a trolley stop where Shobha and Shukumar had lived for 3 years. So here in this particular sentence, you'd come to know about the particular locality which would be affected by this disruption of electricity supply. So the houses on the quiet tree-lined street within walking distance of a row of brick-faced stores and a trolley stop. Now, there are certain houses and stores, and the area is lined with trees. And there is a trolley stop. Now, a trolley stop is a kind of a location which has been designated for passenger loading of trolleys or light rail vehicles, which were owned and operated by the San Diego Metropolitan Transit System. Now, San Diego is a city in California, so in America. So it is a place where all these passenger loading took place. And now we get to meet the two characters, the two important characters in this short story. Who are they? They are Shobha and Shukumar. Now, the spellings actually are a bit different for both Shobha and Shukumar. So, the way Jhumpa Lahiri has spelled it. Now, this couple, they are a married couple, and they had been living in this locality for 3 years. It's good of them to warn us, Shobha conceded after reading the notice aloud, more for her own benefit than Shukumar's. So Shobha reads this notice aloud, and she says that it is good of the authorities to let the people know that the electric supply will be disrupted, will be stopped for 1 hour because of this repairing work. Now, she was reading aloud this notice, but actually she was as if she wanted her husband to hear this, but it was more for her own benefit, as it seemed. She let the strap of her leather satchel, plump with files, slip from her shoulders and left it in the hallway as she walked into the kitchen. So the strap of her leather satchel is of course a bag with a strap which is used to carry books. So she was carrying this leather bag which can be used for carrying books, and she left it in the hallway. She wore a navy blue poplin raincoat over grey sweatpants and white sneakers, looking at 33 like the type of woman she had once claimed she would never resemble. So here we get a kind of a description of Shobha. She is 33 years old, and she is wearing a navy blue poplin raincoat. Now, a poplin raincoat, actually, it is also called tabinet, Tabinet, and it is a fine but thick wool. It's a raincoat which is made of a fine but thick wool. And it's a raincoat which is made of fine but thick wool, either wool, cotton, or silk fabric. So this raincoat was this poplin raincoat. And as we can see, Shobha, when she comes into the house, she is wearing this raincoat and also grey sweatpants, white sneakers. And the writer here comments, that is Jhumpa Lahiri comments, that at 33 years old, she was looking like a woman which she had claimed that she would never look like that kind of a woman. But she now looked like that kind of a woman which she had denied to be ever looking like. So as if Shukumar is thinking about this. She had come from the gym, so she had been visiting the gym. Her cranberry lipstick was visible only on the outer reaches of her mouth. So cranberry lipstick, it's a fruit, as you know, cranberry, dark colored, and her eyeliner had left charcoal patches beneath her lower lashes. So the lipstick and the eyeliner, they were a bit messy. She used to look this way sometimes, Shukumar thought, on mornings after a party or a night at a bar when she'd been too lazy to wash her face, too eager to collapse into his arms. So sometimes she would, in the past, she would look like this after a party, when she woke up in the morning or after a night out at the bar, and she would be lazy. She would not bother to wash her face, and she would go to Sukumar's arms. She dropped a sheaf of mail on the table without a glance. Her eyes were still fixed on the notice in her other hand. But they should do this sort of thing during the day. So this is what she comments on. She says, now she dropped this sheaf of mail, so quite a few letters, on the table without looking, and she was looking at the notice that she was holding in her other hand. And she commented that these repairmen, they should do the repair works during the daytime. When I'm here, you mean? Shukumar said. So you want them to do this work when I will be here. He put a glass lid on a pot of lamb, adjusting it so only the slightest bit of steam could escape. So Shukumar was actually cooking a pot of lamb. Since January, he had been working at home, trying to complete the final chapters of his dissertation on agrarian revolts in India. When do the repairs start? So he asks the question, when do the repairmen they start doing the repair work? And now we come to know about Shukumar. Now, since the month of January, he had been confined to his home. So he was not going to his workplace. And why was he staying at home? Because he wanted to complete the final chapters of his dissertation. So he was writing a thesis, a dissertation. And what was the subject of the dissertation? It was the agrarian revolts in India. So the revolt of the farmers in India. So that was the subject or the topic on which he was working. So he puts this question, when do the repairs start? It says March 19th. Is today the 19th? Shobha walked over to the framed corkboard that hung on the wall by the fridge, bare except for a calendar of William Morris wallpaper patterns. Now, so this is March 19th. and since January, so Shukumar had been working for almost 3 months, at least 2.5 months. He had been staying at home. So Shobha replies that they would start working, they would start doing the repair works from March 19th. So is today the 19th? So she is not sure about the date. And then she walks over to the framed cork board. Now cork boards actually is a kind of a bulletin board. It's a rectangular board that is there on the wall. So you must have seen them on in college also, where the notices are pasted, or they are not actually pasted, but they are pinned. So that is a cork board, bulletin board, and that was there in their house. It was by hanging on the wall by the fridge, and it was surprisingly there was nothing on it, except there was a calendar of William Morris wallpaper patterns. Now William Morris was one of the you must have heard about him when you were doing your introduction to English poetry, and you were reading about the pre-Raphaelite movement. So you must have read about, uh, Dante Gabriel Rossetti, Algernon Charles Swinburne, William Morris, Christina Rossetti, and other poets who belong to this pre-Raphaelite movement. Now, William Morris, his dates are 1834 to 1896, and he was an English poet, he was an artist, and a socialist activist. He was also a textile designer, and he used to design certain, flower designs like that. And some of his important designs are jasmine, marigold, willow, larkspur. So these are there. If you search in the internet, you will get to see some of his designs. So here the reference is to this William Morris wallpaper pattern. So there are a number of wallpapers which he had designed and which were quite popular during the late Victorian period. So they have this William Morris wallpaper pattern calendar uh, hanging on the wall, on the corkboard rather, framed. She looked at it as if for the first time, studying the wallpaper pattern carefully on the top half before allowing her eyes to fall to the numbered grid on the bottom. So Shobha looks at the wallpaper pattern first, as if she was looking at it for the first time. So this indicates perhaps that she was a bit absent-minded. She had not perhaps noticed the pattern carefully before, and now she comes to the days. A friend had sent the calendar in the mail as a Christmas gift, even though Shobha and Shukumar hadn't celebrated Christmas that year. So this calendar had been sent as a Christmas gift. So back in December, perhaps in early December. But actually, as the writer comments, Shobha and Shukumar, they had not celebrated Christmas. So this sounds a bit odd to us. Actually, people, even Indians who live in the United States, they celebrate Christmas, uh, even though they are not Christians. So this sounds a bit odd. So why did we think we have this question looming up in our minds? Why did Shobha and Shukumar, why didn't they celebrate Christmas? Today then, Shobha announced, you have a dentist appointment next Friday, by the way. So the repairs would be starting that night itself. And Shobha reminds Shukumar that he has a dentist's appointment next Friday. He ran his tongue over the tops of his teeth. He had forgotten to brush them that morning. So this gives us the impression that Shukumar is really engaged, or he is almost engrossed in his writing of this dissertation that he was working on. So he had forgotten to brush his teeth. It wasn't the first time. He hadn't left the house at all that day or the day before. So he had been confined to the house. He had been working in the house. He had not gone out. And this was not the first time that he had forgotten to brush his teeth. The more Shobha stayed out, the more she began putting in extra hours at work and taking on additional projects, the more he wanted to stay in, not even leaving to get the mail or to buy fruit or wine at the stores by the trolley stop. So the fact is that Shobha, she is spending more and more hours outside at her workplace. But it is exactly the kind of different thing for Shukumar, because he has not been going out. He has been staying in the house. He had been typing, or he has been writing his dissertation, and so much so that he had not gone out to get the mail, had not gone to the mailbox to get the mail, which, as you can see in this description, that how she dropped this mail. She dropped a sheaf of mail on the table without a glance. So when Shobha had come in, she had looked into the mailbox, and there had been these mail, which it had been piling up, and she brought them in. So Shukumar had not done that job, and he had not bought fruit or wine even. He had not gone to the store by the trolley stop. So he had been spending more and more time in his house, in the house. So this is a contrast between the wife and the husband. 6 months ago, now we are going back to uh, September, the previous year, September of the previous year, and we would come to know about something that had happened to them. Shukumar was at an academic conference in Baltimore when Shobha went into labor 3 weeks before her due date. So now we learn that last September, Shukumar was at an academic conference in Baltimore, and Baltimore is, of course, a big city. And Shobha, actually, she was pregnant, and she went into labor. So 3 weeks before her due date. So it was a kind of a premature thing. He hadn't wanted to go to the conference, but she had insisted. It was important to make contacts, and he would be entering the job market next year. So at first, Shukumar was unwilling. He did not want to go to the conference, but Shobha had insisted that he should go there. He should attend the conference. Why? Because he would be able to make certain contacts, and he would have to take up a job, some kind of a job. It would be easier for him if he knew some influential people whom he would perhaps meet at this conference in Baltimore. She told him that she had his number at the hotel and a copy of his schedule and flight numbers. And she had arranged with her friend Gillian for a ride to the hospital in the event of an emergency. So Shobha actually, she assured uh, her husband that he need not worry, that she would be having his number at the hotel, and of course she would be knowing which planes he would be boarding. The schedule, the entire schedule would be there. And she had her friend Gillian, her American friend Gillian, who would take her uh, to the hospital if any emergency arose. So all these assurances were given by Shobha to her husband, and she persuaded Shukumar to go on to this conference. When the cab pulled away that morning for the airport, Shobha stood waving goodbye in her robe, with one arm resting on the mound of her belly, as if it were a perfectly natural part of her body. So Sukumar, when he was going away in that cab or in the taxi, the Americans call taxis as cabs. Now he was going to the airport to catch his flight. Shobha stood on the doorstep. She waved him goodbye. She was wearing this flowing robe and with one arm resting on her belly, uh, as she was pregnant. Each time he thought of that moment, the last moment he saw Shobha pregnant, it was the cab he remembered most, a station wagon painted red with blue lettering. So the last impression that Shukumar had was of his pregnant wife, was the fact uh, that he remembered the station wagon which carried him to the airport, and that was a red, painted red with blue letters on it. It was cavernous compared to their own car. Cavernous means a kind of a hollow, or it was spacious. It had a lot of space, and their car was not a very big one. Although Shukumar was 6 feet tall, with hands too big ever to rest comfortably in the pockets of his jeans, he felt dwarfed in the back seat. So Shukumar was quite a tall man, 6 feet in height, but uh, he felt dwarfed in the back seat. So it was a big car, and he could sit comfortably. So there was this big car that was taking him to the airport. As the cab sped down the Beacon Street, uh, he imagined a day when he and Shobha might need to buy a station wagon of their own to cart their children back and forth from music lessons and dentist appointments. So when he was going to the airport, he thought that maybe in the future uh, they would need a station wagon, a bigger car than this one, because their present car was not going to uh, hold all of them. So he was imagining that they would be having uh, two children. So in the future, and they would have to bring them from music lessons and dentist appointments. He imagined himself gripping the wheel as Shobha turned around to hand the children juice boxes. So he was thinking about the future, and he was thinking, or he was imagining himself to be driving that big station wagon with Shobha handing the children juice boxes for them to drink. Once these images of parenthood had troubled Shukumar, adding to his anxiety that he was still a student at 35. But that early autumn morning, the trees still heavy with bronze leaves, he welcomed the image for the first time. Now, as we can see here, Shukumar was thinking about the future, and earlier he had thought about these situations, or the fact that one day he would become a father, and he had been troubled. He had not felt really confident. He had felt anxious. Why? Because he was still a student at 35. So he was 35 years old, 2 years older than his wife. And he was still a student, meaning he had not got a job as such, a permanent job. Actually, he had this assignment of teaching. uh, that was a temporary job, and he also had to write out his dissertation thesis, and then he would submit that thesis, and he would obtain his most probably his PhD degree, like something like that. But actually, on that autumn morning in back in September, when the trees were heavy with their bronze-colored leaves, that is brownish colored leaves, he welcomed the image for the first time. So he looked forward to this image, that maybe one day uh, he would be driving his own station wagon with his wife and children, traveling with him. So this was something that at last uh, he was thinking of this image. So this is a flashback to the past in September. Now, in the next paragraph, we read about uh, what had happened to Shobha. A member of the staff had found him somehow among the identical convention rooms and handed him a stiff square of stationery. It was only a telephone number, but Shukumar knew it was the hospital. So when he was in Baltimore, one of the staff of that conference uh, had found him, and he had been handed over this stationery, or this piece of paper, where the number of the hospital where Shobha had been admitted was actually written there. And Shukumar knew that he had to call that hospital. When he returned to Boston, it was over. Or he came back to Boston. The baby had been born dead. So this was the tragedy that had occurred to them. Shobha had given birth to a stillborn child. Shobha was lying on a bed, asleep, in a private room, so small there was barely enough space to stand beside her. In a wing of the hospital there hadn't been two, on the tour for expectant parents. So Shobha was lying on the bed, she was asleep, and this room was kind of a cramped kind of a room. There was hardly any space to stand beside her. And uh, Shukumar went there and he saw his wife. Her placenta had weakened and she had had a cesarean, though not quickly enough. So there was some trouble with this childbirth, and that is why perhaps the child had been born dead. The doctor explained that these things happen. He smiled in the kindest way it was possible to smile at people known only professionally. So the doctor, actually, who had been in charge, he of course sympathized with Shukumar, and he smiled at him in a very kind way, as if he was sympathizing with him. And it was a kind of a professional smile. Shobha would be back on her feet in a few weeks. So Shobha would be back to normal. There was nothing to indicate that she would not be able to have children in the future. So uh, uh, the fact that she might become a mother again in the future. So that was possible. So the doctor had met Shukumar, and he had told these things to him. So this, in this paragraph, as we can see, this is the really tragic happening, the tragic occurrence that had happened in the life of Shobha and Shukumar, and this happened in September. And now the story is now gone on to March. And as we see, these days, Shobha was always gone by the time Shukumar woke up. He would open his eyes and see the long black hairs she shed on her pillow and think of her dressed, sipping her third cup of coffee already in her office downtown, where she searched for typographical errors in textbooks and marked them in a code she had once explained to him with an assortment of colored pencils. So when Shukumar would wake up, actually a bit late, Shobha would be gone, and he would only see the black hairs, perhaps, on the pillow, and actually she would be working in her office and probably sipping her third cup of coffee. So she had been away for quite some time, and she would be proofreading. So that was her job in textbooks and marking them with colored pencils. So that was she was a proofreader. She would do the same for his dissertation, she promised when it was ready. So Shobha had promised Shukumar that when he finished his dissertation, when he finished writing his dissertation, she would proofread his dissertation also. He envied her the specificity of her task, so unlike the elusive nature of his. So the specific nature of her task, that is, she had a very specific task of correcting the mistakes in the printing, whereas he had to write this dissertation, he had to gather his thoughts, which kept escaping. That is why they are called elusive, and he had to put those thoughts onto his paper. He was a mediocre student who had a facility for absorbing details without curiosity. So he was a mediocre student. He was not a very bright student, and he would be able to absorb certain details without any kind of curiosity. Until September, he had been diligent, if not dedicated, summarizing chapters, outlining arguments on pads of yellow-lined paper. So he had been working in a very diligent way, though perhaps not in a very dedicated manner. But now he would lie in their bed until he grew bored. So as Jhumpa Lahiri says here, uh, actually now he was not really so eager to work. Gazing at his side of the closet, which Shobha always left partly open, at the row of the tweed jackets and corduroy trousers he would not have to choose from to teach his classes that semester. So he was looking at the closet where the clothes were hanging, and he would not have to go for his teaching assignment because he had got a study leave. After the baby died, it was too late to withdraw from his teaching duties, but his advisor had arranged things so that he had the spring semester to himself. Shukumar was in his 6th year of graduate school. That and the summer should give you a good push, his advisor had said. You should be able to wrap things up by next September. So Sukumar actually had been guided by this advisor, this professor who was his supervisor when he was writing the dissertation, and he had got the spring semester to himself, that is, he had got a holiday to write his dissertation. And his advisor had said that you will need these holidays and it would be a kind of a push. It would make you work and you would be able to finish your dissertation by September. So this was the situation. This is the situation as we can see here. And I would stop here today and stop sharing this with you. And what do we see here? So actually, we uh, we are looking at a couple, a Bengali couple who are settled in the United States, and they are actually they are going through a kind of a crisis situation, as we can see here. So, because of the death of their child, and the story would progress, and gradually we'd see the kind of tension that is there between the two of them, and gradually we would learn some facts about this couple. So let us stop here today.